Sorry to keep you guys waiting. You all set? Okay, welcome to the Monday, October 21st, 2019 meeting of the Montpelier Design Review Committee. I'll let staff and members introduce themselves.
Meredith Crandall, staff.
Stephen Everett.
Eric Gilbertson.
Seth Mitchell.
And unless anybody has anything else ahead of time, do I hear an approval of the agenda?
I want to add one thing, a quick report on where the design review regs are.
Okay,
You can put that in
We
other
can-
business.
You do that
I'll
under
do
other-
that on the bottom.
Other business. yeah.
So with that change,
I
or
move
with
that.
that notation, do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of the agenda? We'll go straight forward to the first application, 89 Main Street, for Native Real Estate applicant Marigold Adornment. If that's you, come forward to have a seat at the table.
And I'm just gonna ask that whoever's talking, try and make sure that microphone is pointed pretty much right at them. Just cause that one is very sensitive. These are more, these are broader.
Sure, is this,
Yeah, that should be good.
And describe your application for the sign.
sure, we have been in business there for 2 years, and we have signs on the front at the corner of the building where the signs are on the top of City Center. But our entrance, unlike all the other businesses, is actually on the side of East State Street. And for 2 years, we've realized that customers will park in front of that entrance and then walk around to Main Street and not know where to go. So we were trying to have something that lets them know that that's our doorway. So we decided on a vertical sign, as you see in the picture there, and I made a cardboard mock-up to hold up in the picture.
Okay,
To let them know where our side entrance is. And there's existing light boxes from when Village Pizza had their sign and awning sign.
mm-hmm,
And those existing light boxes are what would be used to illuminate the vertical sign as described there.
now in this, does it say tattoo on both sides or tattoo on one and piercing on
It
the other?
says tattoo on one and piercing on the other. It was a way for us to keep the sign smaller without trying to put both words on both sides. The font and design is the same as the existing sign that we have on the front in the row of placard signs.
Is the face of brick and the sign band in the same plane, or is it different? In other words, are your arms gonna be different sizes due to the relationship of the planes?
You mean, is the bottom bracket going to need a different offset than the top bracket? They appear to be the same to me,
Okay.
yeah.
How tall are the letters in the sign?
I believe that they're in the measurements from sign design. He worked out the actual design in order to keep it under the
Yeah, I think we
total
have,
measurements.
I think we have the total height, we don't have the height of the individual letters. But we've got, sign height total of 56.5 for total, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in piercing, so that's roughly 5 inches, right? 56 divided by 8.
3, 4, 5, 6.
That's
Tattoo.
tattoo, yep, but the other one's piercing, which is 8.
So it'd be 10
And
inches.
the piercing would be on the side facing up East State Street?
Correct.
And
the
tattoo facing the intersection of State and Main?
Correct.
Okay.
So
So
56.
tattoo is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
But the total sign is 56.5, so the whole thing
Yes.
is probably less, so that's less than, that's like 9 inches.
6 times 9 is 54. Do you know what the distance
9 or
is?
less.
Distance is from the edge of the doorway there out to the edge of the building and the sidewalk?
I do not know the distance from the doorway to the corner of the sidewalk. The individual letter height is also, there's the our name at the bottom, Marigold Adornment, and then also the border. So the overall height of the sign is actually
Yeah, it's,
considerably almost a full letter's height, probably taller than the letters.
yeah.
And do you know how tall the sign ban is here, from top to bottom?
The sign ban, I believe, was approximately 3 feet. That's what our other existing sign and all the signs that are on the front of city center buildings. That there's like a row of matching sized for artisan's hand, La
Probably
Brioche.
6-inch reveal, and it would be 30, about 3 feet.
Even on overhanging signs, the attempt is to keep signs within the sign bans. I'm just trying to figure out. And the other thing is that the rule of thumb, it's scientifically established, is that for every 10 feet of distance to read the sign, ideal letter size is 1 inch. So if your letters were 6 inches high, ideal reading distance would be 60 feet. A 7-inch high letter, ideal distance reading is 70 feet. If you could make the letters 6 inches high and put marigold on either side, the attempt is obviously to try to keep this sign within or pretty close to the sign band itself. So it's not hanging down below into the glass block, blocking the glass block and the brick. One of the criteria in the sign design guidelines is that doesn't obscure any architectural details of the building. And for this building, the glass block, brick, I mean, that's all part of what's considered architectural details. So if this sign could be held at least from the bottom of this trim piece around the sign band, from the bottom of that to the top of the trim piece, you could probably get away with, 6 to 7 inch letters,
Mm-hmm.
and still be within the criteria for not blocking architectural details.
So then piercing would have to be smaller, or whichever one is pointing.
Piercing would
Piercing
have to
would
be
be
smaller,
smaller.
but again, the distance from there back to the parking garage is much shorter.
Mm-hmm.
So you could squeeze that in, either a 4 or 5 inch letter. A 4-inch letter is readable from 40 feet.
Right. Do you think that because it's offset from the building itself that it still blocks the architectural detail as
Yes.
opposed to laying against it? And how would that contrast with what was existing there previously, like a large awning that blocked that whole area above the windows, or the way awnings are throughout Main Street?
I don't really remember, we don't have a picture of the way that was.
We didn't, I don't remember, it didn't come before this group when I was on the board.
I think that
And
Village Pizza was maybe an original tenant in the building.
I don't know.
Depends on where the awning, I don't remember the awning either. I don't remember where it was located or what it blocked when it was open or closed. But again, it should have been, I mean, if there was an awning there, it should have been located so it didn't block the glass block or the sign band in any way.
Okay, you can see the hardware right below the glass block, along that, the
If it-
hardware still attached to the building where all the awning
If the awning was located below the glass block, that might have been able to be approved depending on
I see.
color, design, compatibility.
I think, given the site distances here, I don't know how many feet it is up to Main Street, because that's when, people are gonna be looking at it. You can see, I would reverse the tattoo and the piercing, but it's up to you.
Well, actually, the tattoo's on the other side facing State and Main.
Okay.
So that has the least amount of letters, so you have 6 letters there.
But, I don't, the only sign like that on that whole facade of the building.
And that's because we're the only ones with an entrance on the
Entrance there,
side,
yeah.
And we've actually tried to even get our address changed, but because of E911 and different regulations of being in a building with multiple units, we still have to list our address as 89 Main Street. So often we end up having to tell people we're across from 11 East State Street, which is the place that's across from there. And so it's been sort of difficult to have some sort of marker at our doorway there.
I see the need for a sign that's pretty visible from that for that location.
The windows of the business are tinted, so even when people are walking by or driving by, they can't tell that we are an open business, because from standing outside, it looks like there's no lights on.
So to be able to have your lights on with your, over your sign is
Yeah.
a major,
Yep, and when
Yeah.
people are driving by,
Mhm.
trying to find us, there isn't a marker to show where we are,
Yeah.
or where they can park, or where the entrance is.
And because of an increase in security for the city center building, they've been changing the lock schedules for the front doors. So when people, our hours don't match that necessarily. And so when people will go to the front door at 89 Main Street and will often call and say, your door's locked. And so we have to try to direct them around, and sure enough, they've parked actually where our side entrance is and walked around to the locked front door. So
that's gonna be
Does
so
your
frustrating.
Does your address, when it says, 89 Main and City Center, East State entrance?
we tell people that, absolutely, but when they do like a Google Map search, it's the official registered address that's listed with 911 and such, and so, an East State, subtext or whatever wouldn't be able to be applied to that.
Just a reminder that because you just have a quorum, all three of you have to agree for an official recommendation.
Also, rather than, again, I'm trying to keep the sign up above the glass block, because when you're looking down the street and see the sign, it's blocking, and I know it seems minuscule, but it blocks, it is a design part of the building, and again, according to the criteria, anything put up there is not supposed to block that. If an awning was below the glass block and just covering the brick, that's not as much of an issue. Would it be possible to both shrink the size of the sign and have it come maybe slightly above and below? So if this is 3 feet and you've got trim that's probably 6 inches on either side, say instead of going 56 inches, reduce the size of the sign maybe to 42, 46 inches, and then where on the bottom, the marigold is so small, you're not gonna read that until you get right up to it.
Right.
Had you thought of doing tattoo, marigold adornment?
We had thought about that.
Reading on the sides, and that allows you to shrink the sign a little more.
Right, but for us, much like a barber pole is like an eye catcher for a barber shop, and it's not so much the name of the barber shop that is the eye catcher for the location. The simple vertical word tattoo is very sort of traditional in the industry, and has been for 60, 70 years. And so what we did is applied our more modern font to that, to try to keep it with our sort of modern aesthetic, but that was the association with it, not necessarily the name of our business, but what the service that we provide and what people would be looking for to find our entrance.
If you, even with that, with the marigold on the bottom written here, if you put this in small letters, marigold on just on the side, just again, center it, but head it on the side, marigold adornment. Again, I've been trying to figure out a way you can shrink the sign and still have it readable. But
The bracketing would have to be different then too, wouldn't it?
Well, the bracketing's only gonna be in the sign band anyway. You can't bracket it through the glass block or you shouldn't be in the brick. So the bracketing would be within the sign band anyway.
Okay, so instead of having the way they have it right now with the bracketing on the top and the bottom, it would still not be
So
the
again,
sign.
you could make the sign so that it's, you know,
What-
up,
what-
up
what are-
above the trim slightly and maybe down to the bottom of the trim, and still have it certainly readable from, you know, down on the corner.
What are the regulations of how far a sign can project?
Let me double check.
Cause I really see a need for, you know, pretty sign that is pretty large and stands out in its location.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly didn't feel that way about, Rebel,
Rebel.
Rabble rouser.
because, but this is a place where people are gonna, if they come to the front door, I think that's gonna be a problem with you forever. But,
We're
Sign-
just hoping to lessen it.
but, you know, it's something that they're gonna, if they walk down the street, you wanna be able to see it all the way from,
Right.
Main Street.
Yeah. So sign and the support structure shall not project more than 3 feet from the wall of the building. And you've got, right now, you had the bracket comes out 18 inches, it looks
18.
like.
Yeah.
So the the sign itself would start like 3 inches from the building. If the sign width is 15 inches. No, actually, I think that's the here 2 inches and then 14 inches to deal with the bracket. Cause they had it a
It's-
bracket
No,
top and
whole
bottom.
bracket is 18, so
Right.
it's 2 inches
2 inches
on
and then
either
the sign.
side, and then the sign itself
Yeah.
is 14
Yeah, is what this says.
wide.
And this was definitely the bracket top
You
and
could
bottom.
make a sign that was twice as wide and
Mm.
meet the projection requirement.
But have to redesign the
I'm just,
lettering. Yeah, but you could.
Yeah, and for us, the hope was to maximize the size of the letters, and so having something that is shorter but wider in order to fit more letters on there would just make each letter considerably smaller. In the long run, any indicator that we have on the side will hopefully be helpful, but you know, to not have to try to alter signs in the future and such, we're trying to maximize the size of the individual letters, which is partially also why we had tattoo facing the direction of primary visual contact, just because those letters would then be slightly bigger.
How important are these bracket arms to the overall sign aesthetic?
Those bracket arms themselves aren't, you know, they're chosen to fit with the aesthetic. The aesthetic doesn't, you know, necessarily match with the bracket arms. So there's other options available. These are the ones that John at Sign Design had suggested.
Something that I'm thinking of is if you were to bracket further off the sign band and then maybe do something that does that.
Mm-hmm. My only question with that is that I believe that the bracket provides some stability for the material because it's not like a thick wood carved
Right, so
sign.
you'd have to have some sort of spine that went down the.
Right, and then even over, because of wind, it's an aluminum based material, and I believe if the bracket doesn't go completely across on the bottom and the top, that it would
Bend.
flex or bend.
what about just, making the bracket extensions longer? So that the sign
Doesn't have to
itself
be like
sits
that.
out further from the building,
Oh,
then it wouldn't really obscure the architectural features.
That would be very easy to adjust, and then also the goosenecks on the lighting are available in every size and adjustable, so it would be able to compensate for that.
But the bottom bracket would, as you'd have it designed, would go into the brick above the door. Is that
Correct.
So
The other thing you could do for a bracket would be to have a bracket that mounts on the side of the sign
12
like
inches
this.
off in the bracket.
Yeah.
actually the bracket could go the whole length of the sign, and then the standards, the amount to the wall could come out like this,
It's
so
fairly
that,
simple adjustment.
so that these
Might have to put a
mounts
diagonal
are
in.
within the sign band.
That'd be great.
And then the other thing is if you wanted to, I would try to keep the bottom of the sign no lower than the bottom of the trim here. And
It's
all-
just not gonna work that way, Steve.
Steve, what do you think about that?
You know, it
So it bumps out further.
Bumps out further, and then the brackets, the actual
Yeah,
mounting
so-
brackets go in the sign band, and then it's
Yeah.
And
floating
then,
per se.
and then the other thing, you could raise the sign up so that as you raise it, the only thing that the top is blocking is just this sort of monochrome area and not the detail of the design as well.
Yeah, I think
Would
if
there
you-
be an issue then with the sign being raised up higher, the goosenecks will extend up higher than that sign band for the lighting? Whereas the
Well-
way it is now,
Well, what you can do is, does this conduit extend out over beyond where the sign is?
there's two, light boxes there, one evenly spaced on either side of the
Wait,
sign.
but does the conduit go past, does the conduit continue past that
No.
second light, it stops that
It
second
stops
light
there,
box?
yep.
I think you could find lights that they might not be the goosenecks, but that would illuminate it.
If you
It's
have,
fine if you raised it, moved it out, so that it's not, then it doesn't interfere with the architectural features either at the top or the bottom. It means you could look behind it and see it continuously. I would be fine with that.
Well, and getting it lifted up a little bit will also, I think, having it more evenly spaced over the sign band
Mhm.
might also make it look a little, cause right now when you look at it, it looks a little funky, cause it seems there's like the sort of air at the bottom, cause you're not even close
Right.
enough to read the marigold.
and the other thing is where this shows, where the artistic rendering shows this located, you have, if you only have these two boxes, you're only gonna be able to illuminate the back side of the sign facing up East State Street. You'll have to move the sign back this way. I would move the sign back this way and then have a light fixture here that washes the sign rather than a gooseneck. Or if you use a gooseneck, it should be set so that it washes the face of the sign so that all the lettering is readable. And again, if you raise the sign up, you have a better chance of doing that.
Yeah, I mean,
There is I don't know if you can tell, but there's a light, there's a conduit box on either side of the sign there. You can see one, and then there's one evenly spaced on the other side.
Oh,
you are
okay.
gonna get a
And
gooseneck
So
on either
you're
side.
on either side.
And the
Okay.
gooseneck design was to not cast light other than where it would be shining down on the sign,
Mhm.
so that it wouldn't be, interfering with pedestrians or drivers or anything like that. It was to focus the
I
light
bet-
just on the sign.
I bet they can find a way to find a different gooseneck or something
Right.
similar that will work on that.
Mm-hmm.
That they, however the sign gets tweaked a little bit, it all still needs to fit in that 6 feet per side.
I think
think
if
you can do it.
you could move it so one of these fixtures was centered on the sign, and then have two goosenecks come up and be very close to the sign and light.
Well, you've got
Oh.
you have two junction boxes, so.
Right, but you could center the sign on one of them.
Yeah, but then it wouldn't be centered over the door. Wouldn't that look a little
That'd
weird?
be pretty close. I mean, they're not very
This-
far off.
It's hard to tell from because they're showing this projecting out, so this one, even though it's showing here, it's actually on the other side of the sign.
Right, but
When you-
slide the sign, so you're,
The sign would be centered between the two
It
boxes.
currently is in the way
Yeah.
it's, that right there is centered between
Yeah.
the two. Yep.
So it sounds like we're gonna pull the sign away from the building. That's.
I would pull the
That's
sign
pretty-
away from the building, and if you would be willing to shrink it slightly, if you could get it down to, say, 48 inches, which isn't much,
And what would,
and then raise it so that it's not, I would raise it, and with your goosenecks coming around, washing down the sign, if you were to raise this so that you keep the bottom of the sign somewhere along the bottom of that trim piece.
earlier it was mentioned if we were to raise it up so that it extended evenly from on the top and the bottom of the trim that's there, the green trim, in the size that it is now. Is that what you were mentioning?
I think Eric was talking about that
Yeah,
too.
my idea, if you move it away from the building, then you don't really have much interference with the trim, because you're gonna have enough view space in between so that you're gonna be able to see that. Now it's not as important on this building, maybe it is on some, but,
And then were you saying lift it? Cause I know you circled here on,
Yes,
so that
because
we
it's-
lift it,
it's-
so it's just blocking this sort of cement up top, right?
it's less of, less,
Less of
Again,
an architectural detail?
it's obscuring less architectural details by moving it up.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, the mounting brackets would be within the sign band,
Mm-hmm.
so that you're not drilling into the brick or glass or anything here, trying to, if you have a bracket down here, that now you're having to mount it inside the, on the brick or the mortar joints in the brick. I would make the bracket so that it's a solid bracket on the side attached to two standards which attach to the building, and then that can hold it out at any,
because
At any-
the signs, you need something at the top and the bottom to
Correct.
stabilize it. I don't know, these custom fabricated brackets,
They're not.
'cause I was thinking it would be easy enough to just drop an L so that the fastening is all in the sign band.
Right.
And it goes down and goes out
Right.
at the bottom and the
how
top
you
of
should-
your
yeah.
sign.
So it sounds like top of sign aligns with the top of this molding, this red molding.
I would rate, or
I'd go-
higher.
I-
I would try to align the bottom of the sign with the bottom of the molding.
I think I would say center the height of the sign on the sign band. So
That was almost how we
so
proposed it.
the center of the sign band, that the projection above and below is the same.
I'm good with that.
Huh?
I'm
Yeah,
good
I
with
mean,
that.
it's kind of balanced.
So what's our dimension off the sign band? 12 inches?
It's 36 inches.
No, I mean, for the overall, for the gap between the inside of sign to
I
the.
just, I think,
Right now it's 2 inches,
yeah,
inside
I
of
think
sign
it should,
to
I
building.
think it should be at least a foot.
Okay.
All right. And then the goosenecks, so.
Now, if you're proposing, if you were to leave it at 56 inches total, if the sign band is 36, and then between the trim piece and the glass block, you've got another 10 inches, so there's 46. So if you put 10 above and 10 below, there's your 56.
Yeah, your gooseneck, you can get a different one that'll
You
adjust.
gotta talk them into lighting up those glass blocks.
If the wiring got put in.
Yeah, I don't know whether it did or not,
So just to put all it together from all of you, the idea would be to take the existing height, raise it up so that it's evenly spaced above and below that band, and then
And the
have
mounting-
a relief of a foot off
Space
of the
a foot
building.
off the building, yeah. And then however you need to make your bracket
So
to
the-
accommodate,
And the bracket would attach within the sign band.
yes.
yes.
Okay.
And that'll all be in a recommendation form.
Okay.
And it'll also that'll be then incorporated, and you'll get a copy of that with the actual administrative permit from the planning office.
And then, do we have that drawn up again by sign design and resubmitted with your suggestions, or how does that?
I think.
You could just do it with a recommendation sheet.
Yeah, yeah, you don't need to come back here.
Okay.
It's on the recommendation sheet, and so if, as long as whatever you put up
It's too bad
matches
we
with
can't
that.
do neon.
Yeah.
We've had some internally lit LED, that's been cool.
Mm-hmm. Like the box with the
Yeah,
LED
it's
inside.
kinda like a shadow box,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, shadow, yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's just, there's a, it's kind of tweaky since internally illuminated signs are not allowed.
Yeah, but
It's a,
it still hasn't been clearly defined, so.
yeah, no,
We-
I agree,
We
it's.
had considered that for inside the window, sort of facing out the LED illumination, where you can change the front
Mhm.
board. Um,
And your letters are just painted on the sign?
they're a vinyl, I believe he
Oh, they
provided
project a little bit?
No, it's,
There was an example board.
there was, yeah, it was submitted, there was a hard sample
Oh.
of the sign itself, and
I don't, yeah, other than, I can run downstairs really quick and see if that's still there.
it's the thickness of a paper, it's a vinyl sticker.
Okay, I just,
But it
was,
had,
was thinking that if those letters, you know, were a quarter inch thick, that you might get some nice shadow lines off here.
no, it's all,
Right.
it's all like flat,
Yeah.
but I looked in the packet and I didn't, the original application folder, but I don't see it.
There was
Yeah,
a
just-
sample
Yeah, I
of
remember
the,
seeing it when you brought it in.
the black
Yeah,
and the
and
yellow,
commenting on
and
it,
then
yeah.
the sign material.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I just missed it.
So what is currently from here to here is 18 inches, what are we suggesting go to?
12-inch gap between the
So
building
it
and
adds
the
an
back.
additional 10 inches total to get that 12-inch gap.
Right. So assuming that it's 2.
Yeah. It's 2 is represented.
I'll be signing.
I think that's gonna look nice. It's gonna look neat as the only thing on that side of
Yeah.
the building that sticks out.
I think it's gonna show up, you know,
Yeah.
I mean,
I hope so.
you can
It-
tell people to look for the sign on the side of the
Right,
building.
I mean, people literally park right there at the door.
Oh, sure.
Put money in the meter and then walk up to the corner because they've mapped
And then
where
tell you
they're
the
gonna meet
door is
you.
locked.
Right,
Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd
so-
say once a week on average, at least. We have somebody that walks into our studio and looks out on East State Street and says, I parked right there.
Well, and it's, I mean, that side of the building has been blank seeming for so long since Village Pizza left.
Yep.
So it'll be neat to have something else show up there that sticks out from the building.
One suggestion, if you do have brackets here and here, to keep them within the sign band, or not maybe there, but maybe somewhere, you know, down here and down here. If you do a bracket that sort of wraps the sign here somewhat, and then these attached to that, so you can get it within the sign band here and here. One thing that might make it stand out even more is since you're black on white, with the letter with the yellowish color here, is just around the perimeter of it, just do a black pinstripe, which will make the sign stand out even more, because you're getting additional contrast.
right.
Yeah,
So
again,
it would
just
be
a
like
little
a frame that went all the way around.
It's like there's a frame all the way around it.
The gold will really wash out on the white.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same yellow that we use on the sign that's on the front of the building, so we've seen sort of how it doesn't contrast much, but it works better than the gold foil does,
Mhm.
because of the way that reflects light. That was the closest we could come to mimicking gold.
The only way you'd
Visually.
do gold contrasting would do a bright shiny gold on a black background,
Right.
and that would pop.
Yep.
But again, if you wanna, stick with the black on white, again, I would really strongly consider doing a black pinstripe around it, which will also match the mounting brackets to the building.
Yep.
Again, from that distance, readability has as much to do with contrast as it has to do with the size of the letter.
Right,
It'll
which is
be-
part of why we went with the basic, just white and black, but also reversing it black with like a gold lettering or something was much darker than our general aesthetic is very bright and open and airy, and so keeping it with our general aesthetic.
The other thing too is with the where in which the brackets mount within the sign band, it'd be nice to have them symmetrical, but also have them aligned to the 1x material that's on within the sign band. So
Mhm.
you've got several 1x6 on
Yeah,
that sign
centered
band.
on-
So it'd be nice to center those mounting plates for the brackets
Within there.
centered on a 1x, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yes. Yep.
I know it's ending up being a custom bracket, but
Yeah, it should be easy as long as we measure the distance
Yep.
between each one.
So anyway, the recommendations, the sign would be evenly spaced above and below the existing sign band. The sign would be projected away from the building to achieve a 12-inch gap between the building and the edge of the sign. The mounting brackets will be mounted only within the sign band, and at your option, a black pinstripe can be added to the perimeter of the sign for additional contrast.
Sounds good.
And I think what he said, centered
On the boards,
on the
within
board,
the,
centered on
1x6.
the boards,
within the sign band.
on the sign band, so you're not having a bracket.
mounting plates will be centered on sign band boards.
Yeah.
Can you show me on the picture, just so
sorry,
that I
you said
understand
center?
exactly?
So you
I
have
would
the
just go
sign band
top and
here,
bottom.
Yes.
I mean,
but
you
then
go
also
underneath.
within each
In
of
other
these
words,
boards,
the
wherever
boards
the,
on the
the
sign
bracket
band.
is put, make sure it's
Doesn't matter
centered within
where they
those
go.
boards
Just so that
as
the
best you
bracket
can.
doesn't cross
But
So,
over
the-
into
the
another.
the brackets would be
Yeah,
mounted
just
like
yes.
So
here.
it's nice and neat.
It's
Yeah,
an
they're
aesthetic.
centered on these
Yeah.
boards.
Yes.
Getting it
So
within
that
the sign
wherever
band
they put 'em,
is
so it's not
both an aesthetic as
overlapping
well
the
as an
cracks in the
architectural
board
thing,
or
avoid
something.
putting new holes in the actual, like, masonry of the building. But then within the boards itself, centering it within those is more of an aesthetic,
Right.
having things look even and
When
makes
they
it
actually
neat.
mounted, they.
So it's not
they-
taking up one board and then partially going into the
Right.
next. I understand that. Okay.
They, what they might wanna do, I don't know what the structure is behind
Mm.
that, but they might wanna put like a vertical board
Oh, behind it
behind,
for support.
so it can be fastened in a number of places.
Mm.
And again, you can see, look at that location and see what's there, how are the boards attached and what's
Yeah,
what's
I-
backing it up.
Right.
I don't know what's behind
Is it
that.
like a, 3/4 inch plywood panel, or is it
Right. We can ask John because he mounted our other signs, 2 years ago,
Yep.
and I'm sure he'll remember what he had to drill into. So.
so again, the only change
That
is the
one
mounting
back, we can
brackets
give you a
are
spec
mounted
too, if
only
that-
within
did
the
you guys
sign
keep a
band
copy of your
and
application?
centered
I do have
on
one,
the
yeah.
sign band boards.
Okay.
But just
Anything
gives it-
else to add or change or,
No.
okay.
We've had some big sign things recently, so trying to
You could have put up a great big tattoo.
make sure we follow,
Yeah.
follow the regulations.
Our aesthetic is definitely different than like those kind of graphics and such. It's very just modern and clean, and even just that font took us a very long
was a big
months
decision.
to decide on. So yeah,
Well, you wanna get it right, you want it to be readable and to look good.
exactly.
And to fit with what you're doing.
Right, yeah, because we do have a particular experience that's different than what people would imagine, and so it has to go with that.
You want the artistry outside to reflect that's inside.
Right, yeah.
Okay, I'll read through the criteria. Design review standards. A, preservation or reconstruction of the appropriate historic style if the proposed project's in the historic district or involves an historic structure.
Got
Well,
it.
it's in the district, so I'll call it acceptable.
I wonder if the building must just not getting to 50 years yet.
1988 or 80-something, 80s.
I think the
Not
fire
yet.
was
Pretty,
86,
pretty,
right?
it's 40,
Yeah.
not quite 50.
Yeah, not there
Harmony
yet.
of exterior design with other properties in the district, acceptable. Compatibility of proposed exterior materials, acceptable. Compatibility of proposed landscaping, none proposed in this application. Prevention of the use of incompatible designs, buildings, color schemes, or exterior materials, acceptable. Location and appearance of all utilities, acceptable with a gooseneck. So the gooseneck's gonna be black to match the sign?
Correct.
Okay, I didn't, is that on the
I think so, yeah.
proposal for black goosenecks?
I think so.
We requested black from John's, should be with us.
Yeah.
I'll just make a clarification, the gooseneck lighting is black.
I think maybe you told me.
Number G, recognition of and respect for view quarters and significant vistas, including gateway views of the city and state house, acceptable. Conformance with cityscape placement and design recommendations, acceptable. Compatibility with subject property and adjacent properties, acceptable. Shall not obscure significant architectural details, close enough. Consistency and uniformity of multiple signs, CB2 and OP, not applicable. Illumination, it's acceptable with the gooseneck lighting. Pennants and banners, not applicable. And individual letters painted or engraved directly on the building or structure are encouraged. In this location, the projecting sign is acceptable. All in favor with the other recommendations, raise your hand. And if you could sign that one just above my name on the left there.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. And then does that get
Yeah,
mailed to us?
so this'll, yeah, and I mean, you're close enough that if you want, I can just have Audra send you an email when she picks up the permit, you can pick it up, or
Yes,
we can
perfect.
email, okay.
Yeah, I can come pick it
Great,
up.
thank
Okay.
you so much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
I hope this helps.
I hope so too. Thank you.
Okay, minutes, do we have enough? Steve,
there's
nope,
mine.
we don't have enough. So we can't do minutes.
And you had something else you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, just quick report, the, Meredith, you could probably do it better than I
Okay.
can, but the planning commission has reviewed and made some changes in our recommendations, and the only one that really was, we had much discussion about was the one that asked that the either the applicant or the development review board can request testimony from the Historic
Oops.
Preservation Commission,
Okay.
or design review, but design review.
No, Historic Preservation Commission, as to whether or not something is a historic
Just-
building.
And that was, they crossed out that part of it, and I really want the Historic Preservation Commission to be able to be specifically authorized to provide testimony, otherwise we'd have to go in as individuals. What was the other thing we talked about?
This is to close a loophole, essentially. You're trying to close a loophole.
Yeah, so that there's some way for the historic significance of buildings to be determined. It primarily deals with the demolition
Yeah.
part of it. Bob's still working on the demolition part. I had a discussion with him the other day.
Yeah, it's primarily a way to try and catch buildings that have historical significance for Montpelier, but might not be officially listed on the national or state registers yet.
It's,
Where maybe they've been nominated, but they haven't actually made the list yet. I think that's one of the big, loopholes, where
'Cause-
somebody
'cause
might
it-
then decide to try and demolish something, just
Like-
because it hasn't officially made the list.
even though Montpelier is the largest district in the state, it's sort of unmanageable that way.
Yeah.
And we can't add to it, we have to do new districts, but I would be willing to bet that only about half the eligible buildings in the city are actually listed on the register. So it's just a way that the Historic Preservation Commission can provide Most of the changes are, I wouldn't even call them procedure, but they had some good clarifications, putting some things in kind of a more standard format and referencing other sections rather than putting them in there. It's awful to read. It's
So,
like-
but the planning commission's gonna have its first public hearing on next Monday, so the 28th, on the design review regulations to start getting some public comment. It is not the official, noticed for hearing for adoption. It's just the first public hearing to try and elicit
we took-
public input on it before then maybe making some further changes based on public input
We
before
took
noticing
a
it for
quick look
adoption.
at the map, which was, to me anyway, confusing and kinda hard to read, and I wanna put, Cliff Street back in it again.
Yeah. So yeah, they're making some minor changes to the design review district is
Yeah.
the plan, but that's gonna be up for public discussion on Monday as well. So we'll see how that goes.
That'll
It's
be
more,
interesting.
this is supposed to be more cleanup to make sure that if part of a zoning district neighborhood is in the design review district for equity purposes, to make sure the whole neighborhood is in that design review district.
Or they took
But
out
we'll
some
see.
small pieces
Yep.
that I couldn't, figure out how significant that was.
Yeah, some of them are tiny little bits.
So,
So that happens on Monday night.
and anybody that wants to attend, I'm gonna be there. Just to hear what,
Yeah, I can circulate I have to finish cleaning up the draft design review regulations for that, but I'll circulate that along with the proposed map changes to design review, hopefully tomorrow.
if you
Okay.
wanna go to another meeting.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna be on 6 weeks in a row.
Wow. Any other business?
No,
Do we hear a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
All in favor of adjournment, raise your hand. Meeting is adjourned.
You got all my paperwork.
By the way, I don't even know what happened with I'm sure the Development Review Board approved their